bank robbery character tier list. You saw the thumbnail. You know how it goes down. We are doing it right the fuck now. Here's all of our characters. Fuck it. We might just start off with the mastermind himself. So the mastermind character typically serves as the entire backbone to the robbery. He's pretty much in every bank robbery movie or TV show and pretty essential character. Usually they're way too smart, unrealistically smart, and they usually plan stuff out far in advance. Sometimes they're fucking stupid and they make a whole bunch of mistakes that leads to their capture or their death. So I think this character really is a mixed bag, but generally they're the top 2 or 3 characters in a movie as far as how much I like them. I think they belong in A tier. Not S tier because they're usually not my favorite character. Alright, moving on to what I would say is a more interesting character. Most of the time is the getaway driver. Sometimes they don't have a lot of lines, sometimes they're more of a main character, but the getaway driver is honestly the coolest among them. Usually drives pretty fucking good. If not, then he's usually a complete dipshit. As far as characters in a bank robbery, I'm gonna have to put him in S tier because honestly I could see myself being a getaway driver because I like driving fast away from the police, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him in S tier. Alright, the announcer character. So pretty much in every bank robbery, there's going to be one guy who announces it and says, okay, this is a bank robbery. This instance and most instances, they actually end up jumping on the teller's desk. They like to jump up on tables. They like to be a little flashy. And I think the announcer character is sometimes a guns for hire character or maybe even the mastermind, but it's always a good character and a pretty interesting character. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in S tier. Another one from the robber side of things, we have the plot twist. This is usually the robber that either thinks they're going to get killed by the rest of the group, so they try to turn the tides, or they're trying to just steal the money back that the robbers just stole from the bank and keep it for themselves. So the plot twist character is always an interesting dynamic, but almost every time their plan is completely foiled, they end up getting killed. So I'm just going to put them in D tier just because it never works out. If it worked out more often, then the plot twist character would have a better name. But really, it never works out, and it's kind of they're just pretty much killing themselves in the process. So, all right, here we have the attempted hero character. This is most likely just one of the hostages that has a gun and decides to fight back. Now, usually they're not successful in completely saving their own lives. Usually they end up getting killed, but they might take out a couple robbers. So they're not really very smart, but they do add an interesting dynamic where it's like, okay, well, now one of our guys is dead. Like, this is serious. So I think this is an S tier character just because they're kind of badass. They kind of take things into their own hands, and they're just not very successful very often. But I'm gonna still put them in S tier just for the interesting factor. Let's do one of the victims here, the vault key holder, aka the bank manager. This usually the bank robbers will plan a heist maybe around getting the bank manager to open the vault. The bank manager is typically way too slow at opening the vault because they're the only person with the key, but they always go really fucking slow. And it doesn't really make sense because it's not their money they're protecting. They have no reason to really be a holdup here in this situation. So I think the bank manager / vault key holder is usually a really shitty character because they don't really make sense. They don't really act in a real kind of way in most bank robbery movies I've seen, and they're just not a very interesting character beyond that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them in the E tier. Doesn't trust driver character. So this is usually a character that completely disregards, everybody else's trust in the getaway driver, and he kind of calls out the getaway driver for, you haven't really proven yourself. How do I know you're a good driver? How do I know that you can get us away from the police? So this character is a really good character, even though I root for the getaway driver almost every time. I like that they provide a challenge for the getaway driver to kind of prove themselves and sort of a break or bust situation. So I'm going to put him in A tier. All right, here we have the news crew. This is neither a robber or a hostage or a police member. They're just kind of the news crew that reports on the robbery. This may provide as exposition for maybe somebody else in the plot that hasn't seen the robbery take place. Maybe the news crew is the one that tells them on the TV, or the news crew is sort of just there as sort of extras because a news crew would be there realistically if there was a robbery. So typically these characters don't really do anything. They're not very useful. So I'm just going to put them in E tier. They're not ever interesting, honestly. All right, next we have the criminal love interest. This is a character that is a woman who is attracted to one of the robbers, or is maybe the wife or girlfriend of the robber. The criminals' wives are usually pretty hot. They're usually like good girls sort of characters that don't really want to get tangled up with a robber or a criminal in any way, but they just so happen to fall in love, and she serves as the angel on the right shoulder of the robber who, I don't have to do these robberies anymore, like I have this good woman. This character serves a good dynamic as far as a look into the robber's home life, but beyond that, they usually don't have too much of a sway in the plot. I think it's an above average character. I'm going to go ahead and put it in B tier. Ooh, let's go ahead and move to the seasoned detective. Now, the seasoned detective is an essential character in a lot of bank robbery movies or TV shows. He's basically the cop that's been doing it for way too long. He is almost always an alcoholic, always neglects his family in order to chase these criminals full time. This is the primary dynamic in a lot of bank robberies, where it's the mastermind versus the seasoned detective. And so this character is just an S tier, and Al Pacino here played it perfectly in the movie Heat. Even though I don't like cops, it's still a great character. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in S tier. All right, speaking of seasoned detective, we're going to go ahead and move it to the retired criminal, who is usually a robber who was retired and maybe is going back for one last bank robbery so that they can live, carefree for the rest of their life. Or they got tied up in something and need the money quickly, so they're going to go ahead and go back and do one last bank robbery. So I think this character is always a good character, always one of the better robbers. They're not a rookie. They've done this for a long time, and they have a lot of experience. So I'm going to go ahead and put him in S tier. This is always a great character. Next, we have the security guard. The security guard is either a complete dipshit, or he does actually try to stop the bank robbers, always unsuccessful, either ends up getting shot or just gets disarmed. Nothing ever really happens of the mall cop that is the bank security guard. So I'm just going to go ahead and put him in E tier. I mean, he's really just a lame character in general. All right, here we have the detective's love interest. So like I said before, with the criminal love interest, this character is a look into the seasoned detective's home life, and she is usually just a punching bag for a alcoholic cop. And for this reason, you feel bad for her, but you can't really say she's a good character in any sense. She's just sort of, like I said, a punching bag for an alcoholic. So I'm just going to put it in C tier. I do feel bad for her, so I'll put her in C tier. This is a minor character and is often not portrayed or is just a mastermind, but this is the guy that picks out the masks. So in every bank robbery, there has to be a guy who picks out the masks that they wear. I think this character is very underrated. They do pick out the mask, which is the entire public perception of the bank robbers, because that's all you can see of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them in A tier. They do have a big shoes to fill as the guy that picks the mask, and they usually go underrepresented. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them in A tier. All right. Next, we have the guns for hire character. This is just a generic robber character who is just hired because he has a gun and maybe he's a strong, tough guy. Typically a criminal already. Sometimes they're the ones that end up getting the robbers caught by the detective because they leave some sort of hint of evidence, or they commit another crime that links them to the first crime. So this character is really hit or miss, and it's really just a run-of-the-mill robber character. And for that reason, I'm just going to put him in B tier. Typically, they're just sort of middle of the road. Here we have the late cop character. So this is the character that is just really late to the party as far as, all right, I'm going to go catch these bank robbers. And then, they hear, bank robbery. So they start driving, and then they just drive at a snail's pace to the bank robbery and actually get there too late, and they're like, oh darn it, so this is typically a bad character, typically somebody that you're just like, what are you doing? Like, you could have caught the bank robber if that was your real goal here. They're kind of just a useless character, and so for that, I'm going to put him in E tier. In general, I don't like cops, so I'm just going to go ahead and put him in E tier. Speaking of cops, we have the undercover cop here. This is usually a guy that gets hired by the mastermind that is actually an undercover cop the entire time. And sometimes there's this dynamic here where the robbers are suspicious of, maybe we have a rat in our group here, so we have to figure out who the rat is, and that takes place in Reservoir Dogs. It's always an interesting dynamic, kind of looking for who the rat is, or maybe they don't know about the rat the entire time and it's revealed at the end as a plot twist. So I think this is a cool dynamic to see, and it's not played out enough, I think, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it in A tier. Here we have the generic teller character. This is just a bank teller. Usually they put their hands up. They might try to press the alarm button, but in this case, this is just a regular teller that doesn't try anything. and they're just a hostage basically. Sometimes they're shoving money in a bag. Sometimes they're just like crying on the floor. But I'm just gonna go ahead and put them in C tier because they don't really serve any sort of interest, but they do have to be there. There has to be a teller at the bank, otherwise it just doesn't make sense unless the bank is closed. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put them in C tier. Alright, this character is sort of similar to the seasoned detective as far as their home life goes, but this is the hostage negotiator. This is a nice guy, a nicer version of the seasoned detective, but he suffers from a lot of the same problems, which is they have a really stressful job, and that's negotiating with the hostages. So a lot of the times the robbers will take hostages, hold on to them for longer than expected. Maybe they are taking a while to get the vault open, so they need to hold these hostages for a while and somehow find a way out of the situation. And so the hostage negotiator is going to try to get those hostages out. And there's also a dynamic between the hostage negotiator and the rest of the police, because the rest of the police just want to catch the criminals. There's really no voice for the hostages in this. So I think this is a good character. It's usually a good guy, even though he is a cop. And so for that reason, I'm going to put him in A tier. Here's what we have left. Reluctant robber. So this guy is hired on. He's probably reluctant the entire time, or maybe just dips out last second. But this is the guy who, when the robbery takes place, they pussy out and they just don't want to have anything to do with it. They just want to leave and they want to cry. And God forbid, if this is your getaway driver, then you're completely fucked. You're left without a car. So this character is really a piece of shit as far as if you're a robber, but is usually pretty funny if you're just a viewer of the movie, where it's like, haha, that guy's a pussy. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in D tier. But you know, this character is usually not very likable just because he pussies out so hard. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and put him in D tier. All right, here we have the everyday hostage. Most hostages in a bank robbery movie or TV show are just an extra that the studio picks up, just kind of there to be pointed a gun at. They're usually old people because old people go into banks. For that reason, you know, there's nothing really interesting about these characters. They just have to sort of exist as pawns in a chess game. So I'm just going to go ahead and put him in D tier. All right, next we have the rookie robber. This is a character that it's their first time doing a robbery. They don't really know what they're doing. Maybe they fuck up and get scolded for it later on. Maybe they just fuck up in such a way that it's hilarious and it's a comedy movie. But the rookie robber is a hit or miss kind of character. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in C tier. All right, here we have presses the alarm button. This is the bank teller that tries to or does press the alarm button. Banks usually have a alarm button, or really any sort of place that gets robbed has a alarm button that immediately calls the cops to the location if pressed, and usually the robbers are aware of this and try to stop this from going down. The guy that presses the alarm button has a lot riding on him to get the cops to the situation. Now, if you think about it logically, it doesn't really make sense to call the cops. A lot of the times the bank robbers aren't trying to take hostages. All they want to do is get the money. So to call the cops there and start like some sort of shootout where you could end up getting shot, I think it's not very smart. I think it's better to just kind of give them money and then call the cops after everybody's safe. So for this reason, I'm just going to put it D tier. It does play out in this little clip that I found, so maybe I'll play some of that if it's allowed on YouTube.
That's okay. Here it is. Here's the deal. Hey! I said put your hands up. I'm gonna party on your dime. Do you know what it's like to party on a dime? You know what? You're gonna be so hard if you do not.
This character belongs in D tier. Here's the tech guy. The tech guy is very good with computers, and he usually is a hacker, hacks into the bank to sort of get information out of them, either hacks into the bank and actually gets money out of them, or the tech guy disables some sort of security system that allows the other members of the robbery crew to go in there and take the money. So for this reason, I think the tech guy is always an S tier character, and I relate a lot to the tech guy because, you know, I work with computers, and I'm kind of a nerd myself. Now, I'm not a hacker, and I don't partake in illegal hacking operations on the dark web, but I would say that this guy is a good character. This is a generic character that almost always exists. They're usually hired by the mastermind, or maybe they are the mastermind themselves. They're a character that just has information on, you know, how to rob a certain bank, or, you know, has information on when the armored truck is going to be at the bank manager is going to be there. So they're just a person that has information. For that reason, since they're sort of vague, I'm going to just go ahead and put them in B tier. This is a great character. This is the hothead. This is the guy that shoots first, usually, or punches somebody first, quick with the trigger, and if somebody pisses him off just a little bit or somebody's a little too slow, he will shoot to kill. This character is usually unliked by anybody watching the movie because they're like, wow, this guy's a dipshit. He didn't have to shoot that person. Usually they're a hardened criminal and they don't have much to lose. So this character, when you're watching the movie, you're kind of like, fuck this guy, he's a E tier. But I think as a character in a movie to watch and to kind of make the movie more interesting, he does a great job of making the movie interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and put in A tier. And for that, we have the entire tier list. Let me know what you think in the comments. I think this is a great list. I'm happy with all of my decisions. That's going to be it. Subscribe. You saw the subliminal messaging. I want you to subscribe. So, yeah, that's all.